around as smiles and handshakes reminiscent of a young Jean Chrétien running for class president. This obviously put me on edge immediately, as it would anybody. So, not being an overly friendly guy myself and mostly suspect of strangers, I couldn't help but preempt the impending introduction with a What are we gonna do about that hair? Now, without missing a beat, this stranger says, "And nice to meet you too. Can I grab you a Guinness?" I would later find out that this was called the kill 'em with kindness, or the catch more flies with honey than vinegar routine, which I would see ad nauseum in the following years. Now, since this was a Tuesday afternoon, I don't believe that he joined us for a beer, the beer that he bought us, but that came, where was I here? But that was the day that I came to realize that this stranger just lived right downstairs from me on 98 Prince William. And thus began a time that we fondly refer back to now as the dark year. So, myself and Steve Staunton, as I mistakenly called him. Staunton, I called him Steve Staunton, that's what I thought his name was. So, we were two recently divorced, eligible but totally undesirable bachelors. We're both living alone in overpriced, oversized heartbreak lofts in the uptown city scene. It didn't take me too many drop-ins downstairs to 1A for me to start wondering whether this Stephen character had ever lived on his own before. Or if he did, how he somehow forgot everything that you learned in that time. Fridge was always empty, dishes piled in the sink. Laundry sky high even though we had our own laundry machines. Not a tool of any kind to be found. And the pictures he had moved in sat against the baseboards for 3 or 4 months that I knew him. Till finally these two guys I thought were his older brothers paraded in one day called Rattlesnake and the Tear Tear. And they hung him up all level and plumb. Apparently I'd finally met the handier contingent of the Totten Squad. I remember thinking to myself, man, these brothers really monopolized the hair genes in this family, don't they? The older one is out Richard Gere, goddamn Richard Gere. Well, that's saying something. Terry taught me about it. Anyway, of course, none of this deterred me from what I saw as my calling. I realized immediately if there's one thing that this situation begged for, it was my own patented brand of steam building through positive-ish behavioral reinforcement, with a light sprinkling of vicious sarcasm. Some may question my methods, but the effectiveness can obviously not be called into question as I stand here before you today, one of the only 3 gentlemen that Stephen asked on bended knee to rent this ridiculously expensive tuxedo and make sure Angela had no plausible exit strategy. Now back to the 2007 story. Steve and I were not quite, we're not here yet, but he was starting to grow on me. No, actually, that's a little unlike me. I'd like to avoid getting too sentimental. So, not too long after New Year's 2008, during one of our 9 p.m. meetings at Churchill's Pub, we came to the realization that Totsky and I could save probably about $1,000 each a month by shacking up in just one of these heartbreak lofts. That would save me trips up and down the stairs 4 or 5 times a day to borrow everything from underwear to bank cards. So, for me, a huge bonus. And there's a benefit for Steve as well. Not multiple, just one, but a big one. I love to cook, and old Esteban loved to eat. I was not so big on the eating part, so he was helping to reduce our carbon footprint by eliminating waste, and I do mean eliminating. It occurs to me only now that had we thought just a little harder, we probably could have saved about $4,800 more a month by ceasing to live over top of Church Street, but I guess for some reason our judgment was impaired. And every time we began to talk about it, Chris Grannon for some reason would change the topic or inject a complimentary round of beer. That crazy guy. Always gabbing away about something, isn't he? Piece of work. Anyway, I've been instructed by Jib to make this long story marginally less long. So, Todd and I became fast friends and roommates from similar situations. We spent most of our quality time together sipping Guinness, pounding wine, and regaling each other with tales of where we thought we'd gone wrong. This was when I first discovered why the fellas called him Loop. Now, I don't need to explain to you guys that, but maybe you can chat with him briefly later, and you'll have that aha moment. So, anyway, naturally, a couple of Nighthawks on the single scene, we'd make it a point some evenings to attempt to meet some ladies. Now this is how I knew my positive reinforcement was working, because Steve would always say something inspirational before we left the apartment along the lines of, "Let's get this over with." Or, "Come on, let's go, Gregory, these bridges are not going to burn themselves." And see, this is the power of my positive-esque thinking at work. Now during all this reconstructive emotional healing, I guess Steve had begun counseling some young French upstart, fresh out of first year university, who was heading off to flight college to become a pilot or air traffic controller or something. I don't rightly recall, but I do remember him pouring himself into that role. There were language lessons, he was writing recommendations, I heard him pretending to do interviews on the phone, so helpful. Probably, this girl was going somewhere. And this was an interesting development. Oddly enough, at the same time, I was also solving some problems on the side. I had an old associate of mine who was having some landlord issues in Nova Scotia. Very selflessly helped out, and before we knew it, us two helpful, selfless idiots had landed ourselves two unemployed live-in roommates. Then we talked into moving into St. John, and all of a sudden our oversized loft was now overcrowded. Far too small for the four of us. Steve's little princess was really monopolizing the TV room with The Hills on Demand, as well as her favorite movies, Fool's Gold, Step Up to the Streets 1 and 2. It was bad enough she was leaving the hardcover book versions of these gems lying around, let alone playing them on repeat all day, every day. Joanna and I could barely find time to watch our informative and educational historical documentaries that we love so much.
Right, babe.
We struggled through for a few months, but ultimately we needed a bigger space. A space where each of the people that we wanted to live with could have their own bedroom. So I got myself straight on the hunt uptown for a 3-bedroom apartment. If the math is not making sense, that's because one roommate wasn't quite going to make the cut. But did proceed to make for an excellent story for years and years. And of course, the other roommate, she obviously realized that she won the Dude Lottery and later became my wife. Okay, oh, sorry, I had to give myself a little props there. Okay, so I've done well to avoid mentioning any names, and I think it's okay to say that we were on our way at that time to having one of the most unjaded summers that we had experienced in our lives. Now there were still a few bumps in the road for old Totsky, but at least we had my beautiful wife to be as helpful, to offer her helpful advice to go along with all my positive-ish reinforcement. The winning commendation only time will tell.
Oh my God.
Now this was just about the point when we heard tales of a newly single girl in City Hall that had been around Rockies a bit. What's going on with this situation? You have to understand that at the time we were pretty plugged in. Like, we knew all the comings and goings in the bar scene in the gritty city. If a sister moved home, we knew it. If a cousin's boyfriend cheated and the relationship was on the rocks, we knew it. If a hot newlywed smiled inappropriate from across a crowded, dimly lit bar, we could make a call on the month that relationship would breathe its last breath. Plugged in, I'm telling you. We were plugged in. And when you couple that with the Tatinskys' newly acquired mad lady skills, it was only a matter of time before this girl realized he was alive. I was personally thinking like within 6 or 7 years for sure, but actually he surprised me after I missed on an outing to Rocky's Sports Bar. He began spilling on about how he'd met her, chatted with her, and that she was not remotely interested in him. And this was inside of 3 weeks of first hearing about her, so grand scheme, pretty big development. And I must admit at the time I thought to myself, I don't even know this girl, but she's not interested in him, so I just gained a pile of respect. But out loud I was saying, not interested. In my boy? WTF, man. My boy's wicked snap. What could he have done wrong? I took one night off, and now he says he has no chance and that she's not interested. This can't be. So, anyway, things progressed, and now see, this is where my take's a little different than Maisie's, because I actually lived there. So things progress, and he sees her out a few more times, and still it's not going well, but I've yet to meet this riddle. So I take matters into my own hands. I sit Steve down. I give him the goods on how to reel this one back in. And I had managed to keep a girlfriend at that point, so obviously I was the authority in the house. So yeah, I sit him down and the next night, and straight in the eyes I told him he needed to cool his jets. Don't call her, don't text her, let her come to you. Since she's just out of a relationship, she's probably attracted to self-confidence, and she'd surely come around. This was the best plan. Totsky listened intently as he always does, nodded and understood every word I said.